Welcome to Infidelity Nest. In today's story, we step into the quiet ache of a marriage that once bloomed with love, but now stands hollow. A house where affection has faded into routine, and silence has learned to disguise itself as peace. Elena Collins had always believed marriage was meant to be a sanctuary, a space where two souls didn't just share a bed or a last name, but shared a heartbeat. To her, love had always been about the little things. A smile from across the kitchen, a soft hand on the shoulder after a hard day, the kind of glance that said, "I see you. I still choose you." But lately, her marriage had begun to feel like a beautiful home, with all its lights turned off. David, her husband of 8 years, wasn't cruel. He wasn't a villain, nor the kind of man who raised his voice or broke things in anger. He was simply absent. A man swallowed whole by his work, by deadlines and meetings, by the constant glow of his phone. Their conversations had shrunk into transactions. Did you pay the bill? What's for dinner? Don't forget the dry cleaning. Gone were the nights they stayed up laughing at old memories, or those spontaneous dances in the living room when music played softly in the background. What replaced them was silence, the polite, heavy kind that doesn't start fights but slowly drains the heart. Sometimes, Elena would catch herself standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair before David came home. Not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she longed for that moment when his eyes would light up, when she'd feel seen again. But more often than not, he'd walk right past her, muttering something about a late email or a client call. She missed the way he used to touch her, not with passion alone, but with presence. The simple gesture of holding her hand when crossing the street, or resting his palm on her back when introducing her to someone. Those gestures had become memories now, and memories, she was realizing, couldn't warm a lonely night. One Thursday afternoon, after another day spent drifting through routine, Elena decided to book a massage. It seemed harmless, self-care, maybe even necessary. Her friend had mentioned a small studio across town, a place known for its calm atmosphere and kind staff. "It'll help you unwind," her friend had said. When Elena walked into the studio, she was immediately met with the soft scent of sandalwood and lavender. The world outside seemed to melt away as she stepped into the warm, low-lit space. For the first time in weeks, her shoulders loosened, and that's when she met him. Marcus. He was her assigned therapist, tall with an unassuming calm that immediately filled the room. His voice was deep, steady, the kind of tone that could quiet noise just by speaking. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Collins," he said, offering a professional smile. For reasons she couldn't explain, that simple greeting felt different. She followed him to the massage room, a tranquil, candlelit space where soft music hummed beneath the scent of oils. He explained the process with gentle precision, asking if she had any areas of tension. Elena found herself nodding, though she wasn't sure if the tension he could relieve was the kind that had been living in her shoulders, or the one buried deep in her heart. When the session began, the world slowed down. The rhythm of his hands, the steady sound of his breathing, the warmth of the room. Everything merged into something oddly intimate. Not inappropriate, but deeply human. It was the first time in years that Elena felt the presence of someone fully attuned to her. Someone who noticed where she carried her pain. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was recognition. As the minutes passed, Elena's thoughts began to wander, not toward Marcus, but toward the realization of how starved she had become for simple connection. Every careful motion reminded her of what she'd lost, not in passion, but in care. The way David once used to brush her hair away from her face, or whisper that he loved her even when there was nothing to gain from saying it. Now, even a stranger's attention felt like sunlight in a cold room. When Marcus spoke softly, "Are you comfortable?" The question struck deeper than it should have. Comfortable? She hadn't felt that way in months. After the session, Elena sat quietly in her car, hands resting on the steering wheel. The city around her was alive. Cars, people, lights. But she felt suspended between two worlds. What she had experienced wasn't an affair. There were no lines crossed, no forbidden words exchanged. Yet something inside her had shifted. A door had opened. One that made her realize how far she'd drifted from herself. That evening, when she walked into her home, David was at the dining table typing away on his laptop. He looked up briefly, smiled faintly, and said, "You're late." She wanted to tell him about the massage, not about Marcus, but about how it made her feel. About how she realized how disconnected they'd become, but the words caught in her throat. He returned to his screen, and the moment passed. In the days that followed, Elena tried to focus on her routines. She cooked, worked, smiled when required, but there was a hum inside her that wouldn't quiet down. She thought about Marcus sometimes, not romantically, but curiously. He had unknowingly stirred something she thought had died, the desire to feel seen, to feel alive again, and that realization scared her. One evening, she sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back wasn't unfaithful. She wasn't immoral. She was just unseen, and being unseen, she realized, could break someone quietly over time. David walked in, still on a call, gesturing at her to keep quiet. She nodded, smiled faintly, and pretended not to notice that she was disappearing. A week later, she found herself back at the studio. She hadn't planned it. Her car just seemed to turn that way on its own. The receptionist recognized her immediately, her smile kind and familiar. "Would you like to book with Marcus again?" she asked. Elena hesitated, then nodded. This time, she knew what she was walking into. Not an escape, but a confrontation with the loneliness she had been avoiding. Marcus greeted her with the same calm politeness as before. "Good to see you again, Mrs. Collins." And just like that, her heart betrayed her with a flutter. The session began, quiet as before, the same soft music, the same scent of oils. But something was different, not in his touch, but in her perception of it. Every movement reminded her of her hunger to be acknowledged, to matter. Every pause in his voice echoed the silence at home. As his hands eased the knots in her shoulders, Elena realized something powerful. It wasn't Marcus she wanted. It was herself, the version of her that once laughed freely, that once felt beautiful without needing validation. When the session ended, Marcus smiled. "You seem lighter today," he said. She smiled back, tears stinging her eyes. "I think I just remembered something I forgot," she replied softly. That night, Elena didn't hide behind silence. When David came home, she closed his laptop gently and said, "We need to talk." At first, he looked confused, maybe even defensive. But when she spoke, her words weren't accusations. They were confessions of neglect, of longing, of the quiet death of connection. And for the first time in years, David listened. Really listened. They didn't fix everything that night, but a crack of light had returned through the walls they had built between them. Over the next few weeks, Elena didn't return to the studio. She didn't need to, because what she had found there wasn't another man. It was a reminder of the woman she used to be. Sometimes, healing comes disguised as temptation. Sometimes the thing that shakes your world isn't meant to destroy it, but to wake you up. And in waking up, Elena learned that fidelity isn't just about bodies. It's about attention, presence, and the courage to be honest about what's missing before it's too late.